Time is a pendulum. It swings back and forth between trends and vibes, consistently changing. At the two ends of the pendulum's path, we have two different kinds of feelings. It's so over, and we're so back. For the past 5 to 8 years, we've been on the it's so over end. Nihilism dominated our culture. Big tech got more powerful. A burning world analogous to Wall-E seemed inevitable. But the pendulum is starting to swing the other way again. If history has shown us anything, it's that humans are fallible to the same silly mistakes, but we're just as susceptible to fixing them and improving the human condition. Welcome to Gen Z's Optimism Era. Elon Musk is the world's first trillionaire. Pretty baffling statement to open up a discussion about optimism, right? If things were truly getting better, wouldn't Elon have donated like half or 3/4 of his money to some charity? Well, in order to make a convincing argument for why things are going to get better in the future, we first have to talk about the power structure plaguing the present day: gerontocracies. A gerontocracy is a form of political organization in which power and leadership are disproportionately held by the oldest members of a society. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the oldest presidents in American history. From 1951 to 2025, the number of House members that are 70 or older skyrocketed.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Power is synonymous with wealth, which has also been disproportionately accumulated by older people. In 1981, the median age of homebuyers was around 31. Today, it sits at 59, and the average age of American millionaires rose to 61 in 2022 from 57 in 1992. At the first layer of observation are people saying, yeah, so what? You're supposed to get wealthier as you age. You've got to work for decades to accrue a substantial amount of wealth. Why should young people expect to get rich quick? That's the problem with you young people. You want handouts. Of course, this is a straw man for why people are actually outraged with this system. Almost nobody disagrees with the idea that as you age, your skills increase and therefore your ability to provide value to the world and make money should gradually increase with it, until you're too old to work. The issue lies in the fact that the people with the money are now so old and able to hoard so much of it that the barrier to entry for even basic stability is unreasonably high. Since the advent of modern science, the average lifespan has consistently risen, save a few troughs. Combining that with the fact that young people have been having less kids, and it's no wonder why more and more money has concentrated to the geriatric elite. Additionally, as you age, you begin to develop fears around losing that money before you're dead. The average retirement age has steadily increased since the 90s, partly because older people feel like they have to work just to pay for rising healthcare costs. And when you're in that state of mind of scarcity, you're thinking to yourself, okay, if everything goes wrong and I'm unable to work because my health gets so bad out of nowhere, I need to be prepared, so I better retain all my assets like my house and my stocks. This gerontocratic system has also led to laws that make it easier for older people to keep the wealth in their hands. In the Harper's Magazine article, The Old Guard, Samuel Moyne states, the primary agenda for old people has long been avoiding property taxes, even when the immunities they win are regressive in the extreme, as is the case of California's Proposition 13. Passed in 1978, the law caps property taxes at 1% of assessed value, constrains future increases, and limits reassessments, auguring a wave of similar legislation across the United States. The purported rationale for property tax relief is that old people no longer have the salaries coming in that they would need in order to pay their share to the state. But this is mostly a smokescreen because of just how much property wealth many older Americans control. What makes this doubly worse is that the wages of labor have failed to keep up with rising costs. As a result, the wealth gap between older and younger Americans has widened dramatically. In 2009, households headed by adults older than 65 had improved their median net worth by 42% over the prior quarter century. By comparison, the median net worth of households headed by adults 18 to 34 fell by 68% during the same period. And what amplifies these trends is the growing generational divide between cultural values and the impact of technology. Older generations cannot truly understand the negative psychological impact of advanced technology without guardrails. They are much more receptive to any and all technology, whether that's AI getting smarter or social media becoming more addictive, because by the time all this stuff was created, their lives were already set in stone. The way that scrolling TikTok affects us is not nearly as detrimental as scrolling Facebook Reels is to someone with an established income, fully developed prefrontal cortex, and lengthy list of assets. So most of them just see it as this cool, fun new thing to play around with. And the older people who do truly understand the full repercussions of algorithms designed to prey on your limbic system have already built lives resilient enough to withstand much of that damage. So we live in a system of old heads. They have increasingly occupied offices where the most important decisions are made, and many of those decisions are out of touch with the younger population. On top of that, tech CEOs are more interested in pushing us towards a future where we're convinced we can do nothing to change what is happening, giving the green light to technologies that are actively destroying our cognitive faculties, self-esteem, and environment. Doesn't seem like the best recipe for optimism, right? Well, for those who are chained to the idea that these trends will only exacerbate over time, I want to offer you a rebuttal. I call it the Gerontocracy inflection point. For all our faults, eventually we will all reach a point where we die, and old people are least impervious to that certainty. The question is, what happens when they're gone? When the old systems, both literally and figuratively, are no longer propped up on the ones who established them, who is going to take over? Gen Z. Gen Z is the first generation to grow up with the crookery of the old systems and all the knowledge they need to change them. They are the first generation to truly feel the disastrous effects of technology without guardrails from the moment they were old enough to read a tweet. And they are the first generation to be young while at the tail end of a world that has been shrouded by nihilism for decades. Nihilistic thoughts without answers can plague you, sinking you deeper into your vices. You need some sort of slow, patient process of introspection to get you out of it, and one of my favorite ways to do that is today's sponsor, Headspace. I've been meditating for about 8 years now, and if I had to point to one of the most important practices that has increased my self-awareness and led me towards being the most mentally, physically stable I've ever been, it would be mindfulness meditation. I personally use Headspace for 5 minutes in the morning when I wake up and 5 minutes before bed. There's a meditation called Jumpstart Your Day, and the narrator's calming voice paired with the intentional breathing exercise helps me relinquish any negative thoughts I may have started the day with, and more importantly, makes the stressful situations I'll inevitably face throughout the day much easier to handle. Take a second to listen and follow along.
As you breathe in, that idea of taking in fresh air as the lungs expand. And as you breathe out, just noticing how the muscles in the body soften and relax.
My emotional regulation after listening to that is just so dialed in. At night, I use the deep breathing for stress relief meditation. I can literally feel my entire body melt when I'm done with this one. And on days when I don't do this, there's a noticeable difference in how quickly my thoughts move and how much I toss and turn in my bed before I fall asleep. If you're someone who doesn't meditate because you feel like you don't have the time, honestly, you don't need the time. Everyone has 5 minutes in their day to meditate, and research has shown that just 5 minutes a day can reduce stress. So if you want to keep your anxiety and nihilism in check and slow down in a world that shouts at you to speed up, you can try Headspace entirely for free for 60 days by going to the first link in my description box or scanning the QR code that you see on screen right now. It's 2 full months of free access compared to the standard 2-week trial available on their website. The way I like to think about Gen Z's growing dissatisfaction with the gerontocracy is like Chinese water torture. Chinese water torture is a psychological torture tactic where the victim sits or lays tied to a bench as small drops of water periodically fall onto their forehead. In the beginning, the drops of water feel refreshing, almost comforting, like a gentle rhythmic tapping or a meditative session. But after enough time, the water becomes something threatening, inescapable. If the torturers change the temperature of the water or make the drops come out at irregular times, the victim slowly loses their sanity, causing delusions and panic attacks. The old systems we move through as a child initially feel like the beginning of that Chinese water torture. Formal education teaches us a curriculum in a classroom with a single instructor who does their best to transmit their knowledge to their students. We are told that if we do our best to listen and apply this knowledge, we will have a bright future with a career we enjoy. We consume these claims like the first drops of the water torture, partially against our own will, and submit ourselves to the idea that the current school system is the best way to take in information. Additionally, we believe that the information we learn will be extremely relevant to our careers and life outside of school, but the real world is often not so kind. Companies today are not seeking college graduates as often as they were in the past few decades, deciding to opt for older candidates. On top of that, the job market is just extremely competitive because the amount of people with a degree is increasing, and online applications and ghost jobs have totally disrupted the process of finding a job. Tying this back to our Chinese water torture analogy, the drips start to feel less like comfort and more like a trickery designed to induce pain. Another part of the metaphorical Chinese water torture is the design of our cities' infrastructures. Again, in the beginning, it seemed that car-centric cities solved a fundamental problem. How do we get around quickly without needing to wait for public transportation, giving us more autonomy? The answer was using urban planning in a way such that our roads put cars first, parking lots first, and human connection second. Utility and function were the basis for practically all of our design decisions. Apartments were designed to be easily replicable and therefore low quality, with no real intention regarding how it made someone feel being in these buildings. That was the cost of efficiency. Social media offered a similar introduction into our metaphorical Chinese water torture. Being able to connect with anyone at any time in the 2000s and 2010s felt like a net positive for society. I can text and message my friends even when I'm not with them. I can post cool stuff I'm doing and get validation from strangers. Sick! A decade later, and now all we're left with is companies exploiting our attention for profit, prioritizing speed and quantity over quality, and destroying our ability to focus on anything for the amount of time it takes to deeply engage with it. But it does not have to be this way, and it is only this way because not enough people in the present are taking enough action to set restrictions and regulations on these advancements that are clearly ruining our lives. The fact of the matter is, there are already a lot of Gen Zers using their optimism to enact the changes we all want to see. The early signs of the gerontocracy inflection point are already happening. Recently, Jared Henderson made a video talking about groups of people revolting against technology called Luddites. It's a fantastic video, by the way, and I really recommend you watch it. In the video, Jared brings up a New York Times article discussing Luddites, groups of college and high school students vehemently opposed to technological advancements. These students meet in groups once a week to actively participate in being chronically offline and remind themselves that they do in fact have a choice in whether they want to continuously engage with technology, but especially social media. You know what's crazy? This article was written in 2022. Since then, this trend of revolting against modern technology has only grown in size. Now, I did make a video about why being permanently offline is pretty unrealistic for most people because so much of our livelihood depends on it. But if we were more intentional with what we're trying to gain from technology, and we only used it to enhance our cognitive faculties and connection rather than hinder them, kind of like the Luddites do, then companies would have to shift the way they design these platforms to retain their users. The biggest lie you were ever told was that technology is neutral, that every new technological advancement, social media, artificial intelligence, and its effects are entirely dependent on the user. But that just doesn't tell the whole story. Technology can never truly be neutral because there are always humans, biased, flawed, morally compromised humans, behind its creation. When people say, oh, social media is all about how you use it. If it's making you depressed, it's your fault. There is some truth to that. Like, you do have to take agency over how you use it. But at the end of the day, social media algorithms are designed to appeal to your lower level brain areas. They are intentionally designed in such a way that you stay on the platforms as long as possible and that your limbic system gets triggered, giving you an unnatural amount of anxiety. Not how true a piece of content is, not if it's actively promoting something that produces nuanced, productive discussion. The most important metric these companies care about is whether this piece of content made you stay on the platform for longer. That's it. So if that's the way these technologies are intentionally designed, no matter how much you curate your algorithm, you will still occasionally get fed content that makes you feel worse about the human condition, that highlights the worst aspects of humanity. The people in power, both the ones who design this and the ones who have an interest in not setting proper regulations to make sure we stay exploited by these platforms, know this. Many of them want you to feel like the world sucks and that humans are worse than they actually are because they know that when you're nihilistic, you're way more accepting to whatever new technology without guardrails they develop because you'll just be like, oh, yep, this stuff was totally inevitable. Just goes to show how much humans suck. Don't you understand that they programmed you to think this way? Don't you understand that we are in control of what gets passed and whether or not we have to adapt to this new technology based on how much we, the average person, engages with it? And this whole idea that, oh, AI, the way that it's developing, the way it's coming, it's inevitable. It's just total bullshit. These people that tell you need to get used to AI, there's no stopping it, it's going to take over every industry until we're all out of a job, are completely oblivious to the fact that if we had people in power concerned with the ways these technologies gather information and train themselves, and how easily we're able to use them to offload our critical thinking, it wouldn't be designed the way it is. This is where the era of nihilism stops, when we realize that we have access to everything we need to shoot more optimism and hopium into everyone's veins. We have all the studies, all the research, all the history to show what makes most people fulfilled and happy and what makes them miserable. Yet, despite having all the answers, we're letting the Gerontocracy use everything we've learned about human psychology to create garbage architecture, exploitative, addictive social media apps, unregulated artificial intelligence, gambling slop, and we're all just sitting here taking it up the ass. And the more awareness we gain around this stuff, and the more we feel the negative impacts of it as we have been feeling over the past decade, the stronger the urge is to actually shift into an era of optimism and start changing things. Now, this is the most important part, the actual change that needs to happen. What we do leading up to the Gerontocracy inflection point determines everything. So please, I ask you to pay attention to this section of the video, because everything we've talked about so far was just build up for what actually starts getting the pendulum to swing towards optimism. While Gen Z's interest in politics is commendable, it is still not nearly enough. In 2024, the alarming median age of a primary voter was 65. In New Mexico, it was 71. Nationally, turnout among the over 65 set was 6 times higher in primaries that year than among those aged 18 to 34. We have to organize and vote for politicians that align with our values. Local elections are the best place to start because they're the easiest place to make a difference. If your priorities are restoring the environment, building more walkable cities, or protecting young people from the harmful effects of addictive technology, which I assume they are if you're watching this video, then just please spend 30 minutes researching the people asking for your vote. Read their official campaign websites. Compare candidates on nonpartisan voter guides like Ballotpedia and vote411.org. For example, when I go on Ballotpedia and put in my address, I get all the elections for all the ballots in the Texas Travis County area. From there, I can go to the candidates' websites or do a Google search on them to see what their priorities are. Then look up your city council, county commission, school board, or state legislature to see how those officials have actually voted on issues that matter to you. Once you've decided who best represents your values, actually show up, register to vote. Check that your registration is current, find your polling place, or request a mail-in ballot if you prefer that or if it's possible. Sites like vote.org and vote411, which I mentioned earlier, let you do all of that in just a few minutes. I will leave links in the description. Also, your city council decides whether your neighborhood gets bike lanes, sidewalks, parks, housing, and public transit. Your county commissioners influence everything from infrastructure to public health. Your school board shapes the education that the next generation receives. These meetings are public. You can attend them and drive public comments during them, and you can volunteer at advisory committees, and you can even run for office yourself. If we want cleaner cities, architecture that inspires rather than bores, healthier communities, and technology that serves people instead of exploiting them, we can't expect older generations to solve problems they largely didn't grow up with. There's this general sentiment in Gen Zers that politics, talking about it, is fundamentally uncool, and participating in it is just whatever, it's not really going to change anything, or if we do discuss it, it should be just arguing back and forth against each other and not actually voting for what we want or changing anything. We really need to start showing up and voting for people who are in our interests and have the interests of future generations. And then, after you do all that, this shit is gonna sound so cliche, I understand, but it's just so true that being the change you want to see in the world works. It just does. I talked a bit more about this aspect in my video about the Gen Z Renaissance on my second channel, which you should check out, but what I basically said was, like, be the one who studies the shit that we want to change. Think about designing cities that inspire and evoke awe with their design rather than disincentivize community. Work in urban design. Pursue a career in which you make decisions around how we should redesign the educational system so it instills the importance of literacy and tech literacy without making our brains dependent on technology to the point where we can't think without it. Create solutions for technology in which what we produce works with the environment rather than against it. Actively seek out good news. On June 20th, Barcelona bombed their residents and visitors with 100,000 poems, inspired by the historical bombings the city endured during the Civil War, transforming an act of destruction into one of peace and hope. More than 75 data center buildouts worth $130 billion have been successfully blocked in the first 3 months of 2026. I highlight these stories not to be some toxic positivity guru saying, oh, look at all the good things happening in the world. There's actually nothing wrong going on in the world. I highlight these stories to show you just how much good is actually going on in this earth and how much these algorithms have siphoned us into negative cycles of thinking. Lift strangers up for no reason other than to help your neighbor. Smile at people when you pass by them. Engage critically with a long text or book. Take notes and put what you read into your own words. Write essays on stuff that interests you. Discuss meaningful topics in groups in real life. Continue rebelling and voting against the gerontocracy that wants to keep you convinced that you're powerless because we hold the keys to the future, not the ones who are close to leaving this earth. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like I said near the beginning, check out Headspace. You can get 60 days entirely for free. Meditating is awesome. It's one of the best things I ever incorporated into my routine. Link in the description or scan the QR code that you see on screen right now. Usually I tell you right now to watch another one of my videos, but obviously I'm not going to do that because that'd be super hypocritical on this video. So go enjoy life and go smile at people and just enjoy life, bro. Just enjoy life.